Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is the first webinar in a new series featuring ERI's oral history program, so we're very excited to have you here. Just giving it a second or two for all of the participants who are waiting to come into the webinar, and we'll get started. All right. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Elizabeth Angel. I'm ERI's Communications and Program Manager. If you're not familiar with EERI, I want to just take a moment to talk about the organization. We work to bring together professionals from a wide range of disciplines and backgrounds, both in the US and around the world, who are working together on the mission to understand earthquake risk and increase earthquake resilience. And we work to give our members the skills and knowledge and networks that they need to meet that mission. To learn more about EERI and how you can become part of our work, please check out our website. We'd love to have you become a member if you're not already one. And I also want to acknowledge that this webinar series is made possible by support from FEMA, from the Learning from Earthquakes Endowment Fund, and by those EERI members. So thank you for that support. Our work also wouldn't be possible without this extensive list of our subscribing member organizations and partners, and we'd like to extend a special thanks to Computers and Structures for their generous support as a visionary subscribing member. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to our moderators today, Talia Anagnos and Laurie Johnson, who are the co-chairs of ERI's Oral History Program. They'll be telling you about the program, about our speakers. I'll just note briefly here before I do that we'll ask you to use the Q&A tab on the Zoom control panel to submit your questions for the speakers in writing, and you can do that at any time throughout the session. And I'll be reminding folks in the chat where that is. Laurie and Talia?
Hi, welcome to our webinar. Before we begin our conversation with our two distinguished guests, I'd like to take a moment to tell you a bit about our oral history program. Stanley Scott, he was a research political scientist at the Institute of Governmental Studies at the University of California, Berkeley, began the Oral History Project in 1984 to preserve the recollections of some of those who had pioneering careers in the field of earthquake engineering. Over a period of 7 years, he completed hundreds of hours of taped interviews with more than 75 people. The first 9 volumes of Connections, the EERI oral history series, were published during his lifetime. The project was later taken over by the EERI Oral History Committee under the leadership of Bob Reitherman. This committee of volunteers helps EERI shape the directions of this program. The committee members also participate in the development of the oral histories themselves by doing background research, interviewing members of the earthquake community, and reviewing and editing drafts before they are published. This is really a fun project, I mean it. And if you're interested in joining the committee, please contact me or Laurie Johnson. We would love to have your participation. To date, EERI has published 31 volumes of the in the Connection series, documenting interviews with 36 individuals. Our most recent oral history, in which Ross Boulanger interviewed Ed Idriss, is available for download on the EERI website. The Connection series gives us firsthand insights into the many changes that have occurred in earthquake engineering since individuals first began thinking in modern scientific ways about how to protect construction and society from earthquakes. All Connections volumes can be downloaded for free on the EERI website. I'm also very excited to tell you about 2 new series being developed by the EERI Oral History Committee. The first is called Interviews by Stanley Scott. This series will make available the numerous interviews that Scott was unable to finalize during his lifetime. At this time, we have 5 fascinating manuscripts in production that we plan to start releasing in early 2025. The second series is Conversations with Earthquake Professionals. These will be shorter, more focused interviews that, in addition to a written manuscript, will be accompanied by other media products such as webinars or short videos. More information will be available in January. With that, I would really like to introduce our 2 wonderful guests today. I'll start with Dr. Ross Boulanger, who will be leading this conversation today. He's a geotechnical consultant from Davis, California, and a distinguished professor emeritus of civil engineering at University of California, Davis, where he was on the faculty for 31 years. He has been recognized for his many achievements by numerous organizations and universities, including EERI, ASCE, UC Berkeley, and the National Academy of Engineering. Ross is an active member of many organizations, including EERI, where he served on the board of directors and co-authored an EERI monograph on soil liquefaction during earthquakes that I am sure many of you own and have on your bookshelves. Ross and Ed are longtime colleagues, collaborators, and friends. Together, they have co-authored 50 publications between 1995 and 2024. They've taught numerous short courses and consulted on dozens of projects. They've also enjoyed hundreds of fine dinners and learned thousands of lessons from one another. Dr. Ed Idriss is a consulting geotechnical engineer from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and professor emeritus at University of California, Davis, where he was on the faculty for 25 years. Boy, lots of dinners there, I can imagine. He is internationally recognized for developing or co-developing numerous engineering procedures that are widely used for evaluating the behavior of soil sites and soil structures during earthquakes, consulting on major infrastructure projects in the US and around the world, and serving on review boards for numerous US and international companies and for state and US federal agencies. He has received many awards for his groundbreaking work, including the George Hausner Medal and honorary membership from EERI, the H. Bolton Seed Medal, the Ralph B. Peck Award, and the Carl Terzaghi Lecture and distinguished membership from ASCE, the Ishihara Lecture from the International Society for Soil Mechanics and Geotechnical Engineering, and election to the National Academy of Engineering. Now let me turn the webinar over to our two distinguished guests, Dr. Ross Boulanger and Dr. Ed Idriss.
Okay, well, thank you, Thalia. I think I'd like to start by, on behalf of Ed and I, just really thanking EERI and the Oral History Committee for inviting us to do this. In my case, the opportunity to do it with Ed is just a great honor. I've worked with Ed for many years, and so Ed, when I think back of us doing this oral history, to me, what was really fun about it was all those interviews over 2018, 2019, you came to Davis 7 different times and we worked through these oral histories. These are all stories I'd heard many, many times over our years and talking. But this was the first time to actually be able to sit down and stitch them together in a sequence. And it was really a pleasure to have that chance to pick your brain and hear it all come together as one story. So I thought I'd start with, what was your favorite part of doing this?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to EERI for getting this going. I guess we are the guinea pigs here, so we hope to do our best today. And knowing Ross, I'm sure we'll do our best. So he's a fantastic, what do they call him, master or something? Anyway. The wonderful thing about this is first to follow such wonderful people, and I think I've known each and every one of the 30 that preceded, or it was 34 individuals, but 30 volumes. And working with you, Ross, has always been a real pleasure. So that was very nice to do, and we enjoyed a lot of wonderful get-togethers. And the other thing that really came out was to go back and revisit all the things that we put in the oral history, so that it was quite a wonderful thing to remember all those things and to go check and make sure that I'm not saying something that I shouldn't say or I hadn't done and think I did or forgot to do, and so on and so forth. So it was a wonderful thing to do. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. So again, thank you, EERI. Let me see if I can advance these slides. There we go. So in the oral history, we broke everything down into a sequence of different time zones. And we started with the early years. And then as we go through the different ones, we had some nice photographs that we put in the oral history. And these are a sample of some of those photographs. So Ed, you were born in Syria, 1935. So kind of kick this off, maybe you can give everyone a little background on your family and how you got to the U.S.
That was 88 years ago, so that's a long time. And that's just a photo. I don't have that many photos of my, well, first I'm number 12 in a family of 12. And only 10 of us survived childhood. So I have had six brothers and 3 sisters. Only 3 of us are still around, and the 3 are shown here from 1942. And would you believe that was me, the littlest one here? And what I'm showing here is my father and my mother. My father passed away in 1951, and my mother passed away in 1966. About actually 3 weeks or 4 weeks before I submitted my thesis at Berkeley. So I actually didn't see her. Saw her in 1960 the last time. And this is a photo that, so I came to RPI in 1954. That's what I looked like at that time. I was eager and young, so to speak. And this is a picture where we're doing the summer program for surveying. I'm the last one on the left, and the next to me is the professor who was handling that course, and the others are 5 classmates. We're all sophomores. We just finished our sophomore year, so that's sort of the early part. But there's just so much to talk about. But I think that's sort of give you a bird's eye view, so to speak.
Yeah. So this is all a teaser to get everyone to read the oral history, because there's a lot more gems in there. Okay, so you're at RPI, and then this entered into, we're the second kind of phase of the oral history. We went into what we call the Berkeley years, and you were doing your PhD, and then a member of the research and teaching staff for a period of, it was a total of 13 years. And so that was, I believe we called it like 1962 to 1975. And over that period, I mean, well, there were 2 new people who became very important in your life. Miriam, who you had just married in 1960, and then Harry Seed, who everyone knows very well your association with and friendship with Harry Seed over all the years. And so maybe you could share a little bit about how you met Miriam and your time in Berkeley, and a little bit about your relationship with Harry Seed.
Well, after I finished a bachelor's degree at RPI, I went to do a master's degree at Caltech. And then in the summer of 1960, a year or so after I finished the master's degree, I went back to the old country, so to speak. And I met my future wife in Lebanon, and somehow we hit it off, and she accepted my proposal. I was very fortunate that she did, and we've been married ever since. And beside my father and mother, who sort of raised me and set me on the right track, so to speak, she was the most important person in my life, and she has been ever since. And for a long period of time, Professor Seed had a tremendous impact on what I did and what I learned from him. And he was an unbelievably fantastic individual to work with. And turns out this is the only photo I have where we are together. And this happened to be in 1977. We had just received the Nobel Medal for our paper on the San Fernando Dam. And the other 2 there, Professor C is the one on the left. I'm the one with the big mustache. And in between us is late Ken Lee. And to my left is Faiz Makdisi. Many of you, I'm sure, know who he is. He also was just finishing his PhD. He just finished his PhD at that time at UC Berkeley.
He's also sporting a pretty big mustache.
Not as big as mine at that time. But he does have a mustache. I don't think he has it anymore either. I shaved mine a long time ago. You can see the one on the left here.
Now, how did you come to be doing your PhD with Harry Seed? How did that come about?
Well, when I was at Caltech, I took all the vibration courses that Professor Hudson taught, and they were absolutely marvelous. I really enjoyed those. So I came to Berkeley, and after finishing the coursework, I thought, well, maybe I should try to do something that involves vibration. So I went to talk to Professor Seed. He was the obvious choice, so to speak. That time it was only Professor Seed, Professor Mitchell, and Professor the transportation, the pavement professor. Sometimes I get these senior moments and I forget names, so that's okay, I guess. And so he was the obvious one because Professor Mitchell was mostly in physical chemical properties of soils. And I talked to him and he said, well, that's really not that's just a big deal. So we didn't hit it off right off the bat. But then later on, he needed something done, so he asked me to do it, and that was just the start. You can read all about it in the oral history. I think it would take too long now to describe how that happened.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating story for me.
One other part, tying that together with your relationship with him, these years overlap then with Woodward Clyde years, which we'll talk about briefly, and how you stayed so connected as working colleagues over the years. I remember Yoshi Moriwaki telling me the story of you would tell everyone Professor Seed's coming, and everyone in the office had to get ready for reviewing some project that was coming up. Maybe you could tell everyone a little bit about how you maintain that connection.
Well, when I first joined Woodward Clyde, and I was working on earthquake engineering related to soils, and there wasn't that much activity except for nuclear plants. I was actually very busy before I joined Woodward Clyde, consulting on those to Bechtel and various other companies like that who were heavily involved in nuclear plants, including actually the Eastern office of Woodward Clyde, where Yves Lacroix was situated. And so when I came on board, I still continued that consulting work, and we just began to get some work at Woodward Clyde. And I always felt it was very important to always consult with some knowledgeable people like Harry Seed, like Bob Whitman, and Clarence Allen on the other side of the aisle, so to speak. And I continued that. And then when San Fernando happened, boy, the thing just exploded. So,
yeah.
And the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that was a great partnership for you and for everybody. I think we all benefited from that. Now, in the oral history, we go through, after we did the Berkeley years, we went in and we did the Woodward Clyde years, which were about 20 years. And then you moved to UC Davis. So there's a chapter on the UC Davis years. That was 15 years. And then the Emeritus years, which are now numbering 20 years. And so over there, you kind of had, that's over 6 decades. And in that time, you've blended this research and teaching career across Berkeley and Davis, a business leader and a professor. And so everything kind of blends across all these different categories. So we're not going to follow the outline of the oral history directly, but instead go to the themes. So we just talked a bit about your PhD in research at Berkeley. The other part was then consulting, and the consulting ran through everything. And so I have some pictures from the history. The Lake Maracaibo is while you're at Woodward Clyde. The other 3 photos, these are during the UC Davis years. And then these 5 photos are from the Emeritus years. And so just reflecting back on your consulting experiences over those 6 decades, what did you enjoy most about consulting or these projects?
Well, you go with the flow, as they say. And I was very fortunate in many ways. When we first started at UC Berkeley, hardly anything had been done in this field. So it was easy to start, so to speak. Yeah. And fortunately, we had a tremendous orchestra leader in Harry Seed, and we were the piano player, the violin player, and so on and so forth. So, and we each did our part. Ken Lee did the testing, I did the analyses, and and on and on and on. And you can mention so many other people who contributed to all this. So there was a lot of fun that way. Plus, there was something happening in the U.S. and worldwide. The nuclear plant industry was getting on its feet. The San Fernando earthquake occurred, and a near failure of the San Fernando Dam instigated the need to really investigate embankment dams, because prior to that, everybody said, well, embankment dams can go through any earthquake. You don't have to worry about them, which didn't turn out to be a very good thing to say. And then there was the oil embargo, so suddenly the offshore oil industry needed some work, and so all of these things happened, and they just happened to be there, and I was very fortunate to sort of go with the flow, and it is, and also what has happened to me is that I was able to overlap so much. Like I was able to work at the UC Berkeley for a while being a consultant, and then work at Woodward Clyde and the University of California simultaneously from 69 to 75. And that just melded together. And a good consulting firm will always do some applied research. And we were able to do that just because of what happened with the nuclear industry acquiring so much attention, and the near failure of the San Fernando Dam. And so it's all melded together. And in Lake Maracaibo, that was the most important part of Venezuelan oil production. And as they withdrew the oil, the land was settling, and they needed to make sure things stayed in place. And we found out there was a liquefaction issue. So they asked us to look at that. And you can see in here, Bob Whitman was a reviewer for the project for the owner, and so was Kenji Ishihara and Bill Marcuson. These are people, most people on the line, I hope know who they are. And there's one key fellow from sitting down from the right with a dark jacket. That's Yoshi Moriwaki, one of the best engineers I've ever worked with, the key individual working with us at Woodward Clyde, and many others in there. So it was wonderful. And then, of course, when Loma Prieta happened, there was a collapse of one segment of the Bay Bridge and the collapse of the Cypress structure. So the governor set up a board of inquiry, and Professor Hausner was the chairman of that. He was, you can see in the middle is Governor Dukmajian, and then to his right is the Professor Hausner, was the chairman, and I'm number two to his left. Next, in between us is Professor Penzian. So that was the board of inquiry, and that was quite an exciting assignment. It was a great honor to be asked by the governor to be member of that. And what's really amazing about all of this is the availability or the ability or the opportunity to work with some of the most fantastic individuals, both at the panel or a board member and the engineers who were either worked with me at Woodward Clyde, or the ones that work for the owners or the other consultants. And it's just unbelievable things that has happened. And, to have worked with the likes of Professor Hausner, Professor Jennings, Professor Penzian, Professor Seed, Professor Whitman, Professor Clarence Allen, you see in the lower picture to the right, lower picture to the right, and Tom Lepps, one of the most amazing dam engineers. And to have that opportunity just been quite an exciting life. And there is Professor Peck working on Saluda Dam in South Carolina, and Skip Hendren, that many of you also know. And here's Lloyd Clough and Tom O'Rourke and you and I enjoying a repast after a long day consulting for the LA Department of Water and Power, and the Calaveras Dam that required replacement. And here I am with John Cassidy, one of the best engineers on spillways and hydraulic issues for dams, and Dan Wade, and then I'm in the middle, and Eric Colgard next to me, and then Gabe Fernandez. And of course, we worked on the Bay Bridge because after the collapse of one segment of the Bay Bridge, it was investigated. They thought initially we could retrofit it for about $1 billion, but there was no assurance that it could be done right, and we could prove it was done right. So eventually it was replaced, and initially the cost estimate was like $2.5 billion. It ended up being $6.5 billion. But it was finally done. We started in 1990, and it was finally opened in 2013. So it took a long time. So it's been a lot of fun. But the most enjoyable part really is interacting with all such these wonderful people and learning and each step from each and every one. So it's an amazing thing.
You know, that really came through. And it made an impression on me when we talked through. And these were just a sample of some of the projects, all the different projects that we talked about and the lessons that came from them. It was the people interactions that you
you and I get spoiled because we only work on very exciting projects. You know? And that's I mean, we were so fortunate to have that opportunity. To be asked to work on such project. I think we should be very, very humbled by it and very thankful for the opportunity to do that. But also requires from us a degree of preparedness that keeps us up at many long hours, so to speak.
Okay, so these consulting experiences, I just point out again, they go all the way back from when you're at the Berkeley years all the way into these emeritus years. You got 6 decades and you still aren't slowing down. Now,
well, my first consulting assignment is I'm an individual consultant. It was in 1967 for a potential nuclear plant offshore Southern California. And on the board, when I went, I was a consultant at Bechtel, and I went to present what we were working on. Sitting at that board was Harry Seed, Clarence Allen, a few other famous individuals. And you sit there and you're shaking your boots while you're answering their questions. But you sort of eventually get used to it. That was quite an experience, my first one. My first meeting with a board of consultants.
Well, I can't imagine you shaking in the boots, but
No,
I'll ask you on that.
Well, to tell you the truth, I never said that before, but when San Fernando earthquake occurred, for some reason, the local station in San Francisco called me up and asked me to come and say something about it. Now, I went there. Fortunately, they had a cover over our leg, so anybody could see my leg. But while I was talking, I was shaking like crazy.
That's funny.
So it is not. I've seen Tom O'Rourke give a few interviews after earthquakes, and he always looks so calm, cool, and collected.
Well, Ed, so the other theme that across the various eras of the oral history that ran through it was always learning from earthquakes. And so we got 4 examples. I think you mentioned that you've studied closely data from 10 different earthquakes that we went over in various parts of the oral history. And so we have these just 4 examples, but earthquakes were always a big part of it, learning from them. Often when you're studying an earthquake, there's that aha moment, the things we haven't seen before or surprise us. You want to share perhaps some aha moments?
Yeah, every earthquake is different, and every earthquake produces something we hadn't thought about yet. So, and the first one I actually was there, went to where the area affected was the San Fernando earthquake in 1971. Before that, I worked very thoroughly on analyzing the Alaska earthquake, because I was doing a lot of the analyses for Harry Seed and Stan Wilson and a few others when I was still a student at UC Berkeley. And the earthquake occurred in 1964, and the site investigations happened in rest of 64 and early 65. By 65, I developed the analytical procedures, and they became in very handy to look at a lot of those effects. So that's how I got involved in the Alaska earthquake in 1964. Then in 1965, also that we obtained the data from Niigata, where a huge liquefaction had occurred, and that's how we started the procedure for evaluating liquefaction that Professor Seed and I developed at that time. So, and then in 1967, there was the Caracas earthquake, and a lot of building got damaged, and we analyzed that in quite a bit of detail together with the people at MIT, Professor Whitman and Ricardo Dobry. So a lot of that, but then the first one I really went down to see was the San Fernando earthquake. And then, of course, after that, there were a few earthquakes in the 70s, which we looked at, but they're not as seminal as the San Fernando until Imperial Valley, because that added a lot of information about earthquake ground motions. And then in the 80s, the 89 earthquake, in the 90s, the Kobe earthquake. And as you can see, here's some photos where a large group of us went to Japan to look at the Kobe earthquake about a week or so after it happened. And you can see John Christian, Liam Finn, myself, Tom O'Rourke, and Professor Mitchell, who passed away, unfortunately, last year. And there you are in the background, way over the shoulder of John Christian.
Yep, shaking in my boots. Shaking in my boots.
And there's one with in Taipei, actually, after the Chichi earthquake in 1999. You can see Bill Page, who was a very wonderful seismic geologist. He worked at Woodward Clyde for a long time, then moved to PG&E when Lloyd moved to PG&E. The two bearded fellows, the one with the hat is Bill Page, the one without the hat is Lloyd Clough, and then Ben Tsai, who was a seismologist at PG&E, and originally from Taiwan, and then Professor Clarence Allen, myself, and Joseph Sun had graduated at UC Berkeley and was working at PG&E at the time. And we went and looked at the Taiwan earthquake, spent a lot of time there looking at it. The liquefaction issues and the faulting issues were all very important. So, and then in 2015, Professor Mitchell was asked to look at a failure of a dam in Nepal, and he formed a board, asked me to serve on that with Bill Marcuson and one other fellow whose name escapes me right now. Again, another senior moment. And this is where we just landed at the dam site, which was about elevation at almost 7,000 or 8,000 feet, a very high elevation. We just landed in a helicopter. I just got off the helicopter. So there we were.
Very nice. That's what is that? That's not quite 5 decades, 4.5 decades of learning from earthquakes. Kind of ran through everything.
Well, the last one I really went to the field and looked at was the Turkey earthquake also in 1999. So I spent quite a bit of time on that, and the Chichi were the last two. After that, I decided that I will read your reports.
Let the younger ones.
And I do read each and every one. So.
Good plug for the Learning from Earthquakes program.
Yeah, absolutely. And for that, I think I should mention that the EERI has been doing a wonderful job on the learning from earthquakes. And Lloyd Clough gave a significant amount of money about, what was it, about 10 or 8 years ago, something like that. And many of us contributed to that as sort of the initiators of that program. And we have since all contributed to that. And I encourage each and every one to really contribute to that. It's one of the most valuable things to do, is learning from earthquakes, and they do need lots of funds. So anything anybody can contribute, please do. And here's the wonderful people. Oops. Here's all. You know, all these wonderful people I've been working with, I had worked with at UC Davis. On the left is the top left is the faculty, the geotechnical faculty, except missing one, which is Boris, which you see on the right. And that's Ross and Katharina and Bruce and Jason and I. This is after I retired from teaching. So, because Jason sort of took my place, so to speak, and I was very happy to see that. And then the one on the right adds the few others. You can mention all their names, Ross.
Okay. Well, there's starting on the left, there's me, John Harvey, runs the pavement center. Then Alejandro, Dan, who runs the centrifuge. Katerina, Bruce, you, Jason, and Boris.
Yeah, so that's all the entire geotechnical group. And then when I gave the Terzaghi lecture in Philadelphia in 2019, after I gave that, we had a photo with all the former students, current students, and some faculty, as you and Katerina and Alejandro, I believe, and Jason.
Yeah.
And and a lot of former students, and so it was wonderful to see that. So they're happy to see that.
You know, I threw these photos in part because we consulting, you blended consulting, you can study of earthquakes and your research, and then teaching was a big part of your career the whole time, because you started out at Berkeley on the research and teaching staff. You taught courses other places. You've done short courses. You 15 years of teaching at Davis, and then you would come back. And the bottom photograph, I'd point out that you and Miriam endowed one of our endowment funds that provides funds to send students to broaden their experience, to conferences, to bring in guest speakers. So that really broadens their education. So I thought, I mean, that's quite a legacy for really enriching the graduate student program. Teaching's run through all your career in various forms. And what did you like best about teaching?
Well, I've always enjoyed the teaching, and because I've always found that the best way to learn something is to try to teach it. And I always enjoyed that tremendously. And in fact, now that you mentioned, I'd never thought of that until now, that when I was in high school in Damascus in the in the late 40s, early 50s, I was going to some place where there were these people who had been imprisoned and did not get educated, and I was teaching mathematics. Arithmetic, actually, at that time, at that level. So I just sort of started at an early age. I remember enjoying that tremendously, although they scared the heck out of me, all these guys in prison. And they were most of them were about 2 or 3 times my age. But I still did that. And for some reason, I was very fortunate to have that opportunity. At first at Berkeley, between from 67 to 69. And then Stanford asked me to teach, and I've been asked many times to teach these short courses, including many at ERI back in the 70s. Bruce Bolt, Kanamori, Clarence Allen, Lloyd Clough. And unfortunately, I was asked to participate with that group to teach some special courses, short courses here and there. And you and I have done a few all over. And plus formal teaching at UC Berkeley in the 60s, and of course when I joined the UC Davis from 69 to now. One of the things that happened to me is in 1968 there was an opening at Stanford, and I applied for that position, and I was very fortunate that I was not accepted.
So were we.
So, no, because things could have changed. You know, I think I grew up in private practice, which was far easier for a person with my personality. and to grow up in that field and then join the university rather than the other way around. Because I'm not sure I would have survived the university.
Okay.
So,
Well, we're fortunate you keep connected with the geotechnical group and still engaging with students and learning.
absolutely. Yeah, you guys have put together a wonderful group. The GSSS
Your love
society.
of learning permeates the group. And I got to tell everyone about you're still learning. You had Katerina teaching you how to run flak, that was only about a couple of years ago. You're over here running flak problems and
Absolutely. And
always learning.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed that.
So blending all that, we'll come back around to your family, kind of try to wrap this quick overview of the oral history up. And this is you and Miriam in your home in Santa Fe. You've now been married 64 years, which is, well, congratulations. That's always a great success. And then we have a few other photos of your family. And I thought, it'd be nice if you could tell everyone a little bit about, where your family is now and where they're all at.
Okay, well, we go to the previous picture, this one in our home in Santa Fe. My wife did a master's degree at St. John's College, and she fell in love with Santa Fe as a result of that. So we bought a small house in the 90s so she could go and spend a month at a time, and I'll join her during the weekends. And then when I decided to retire from teaching, he said, well, where shall we retire? Oh, why not Santa Fe? And fortunately, it was a house just finished about four doors away from where we were. We had our little shack, so to speak. And fortunately, we were able to get it. And we've been there since 2003. And I actually retired in 2004. And that's a picture in our living room in Santa Fe. You can see the adobe type construction of the ceiling, all these beams in the ceiling. And we acquired a little dog, and it was a fabulous, wonderful little dog. And there's a picture of the three of us in 2006. The dog was about a year or so old at that time. So we've enjoyed it. And I think we both have grown a little older.
I don't know.
And my immediate family is I have one son and one daughter, and our son has a son, and it's our grandson that you see there on the left. And the reason for all these flowers, he was getting married, second marriage, not. And we were in Utah, actually in Salt Lake City at that time. Unfortunately, he and the wife he married that time divorced about 4 or 5 years later. And so I didn't include her picture in that one, just the five of us. My son now lives in El Paso, Texas. And our daughter, who's to my right, lives in Berlin. And the picture on the right is she has a glass studio where they teach how to make glass to students, and she gets artists in residence, and she does a wonderful job with that. And there's her staff that I was there in 2000. This is one of the times I was there. I go there every year to see her. And in 2015, the picture we took, she's the one right immediately to my right, and the rest were her workers and helpers and staff. And I think there was a visiting artist. I don't know which one it was, but they always have a visiting artist to design what they're going to make. So, and then below that, you see remember those three kids from 1942, and I was the smallest. Now I'm the tallest, and then the one to my right, and that lower picture on the left is who was in the middle. The one was in the middle. He's 4 years older than me. The one to my left is the oldest of the three of us who's still alive, of the original 12 and the 10 that survived childhood. and he is now in Montreal. He's 94 years old. And the one to my right is in Beirut, suffering from all that bombing and nearby. Fortunately, nothing immediately in his vicinity, but they're okay. And he's 92 years old, so the three of us is still around. This picture was taken in 2018 in a wonderful village in the mountains of Lebanon. We'd gone there for lunch, and there were about 20 of us. Because with 6 brothers and 3 sisters, I have something like 25 nephews and nieces. And in 2020, last year, I went to see my brother, who was not really doing that great at this juncture. And 4 of my nieces are here, and we went up to another mountain village. We were just finishing dinner, and these are two husbands. I won't tell you which is which, but there are 4 nieces and 2 husbands. So of the two nieces you see in there, and we just finished lunch at that mountain village in the mountain. A wonderful lunch. So I thought of going back this year to see how my brother is doing, but things have not been that healthy to travel. And right now, actually, the airport is closed in Beirut, so you can't even fly in there. So that's the familia, so to speak. And the nephews and nieces all have children, and even I think some of their children have children now. So I know the one sitting down with the glasses on, she is the oldest niece I have. She's in her 70s, and she has 2 sons and 1 daughter, and all have children. I don't think their children have children as yet, but her brothers have gone all the way down to that 4th level, so to speak. So the family, and I don't know all of them, but I do know all my nieces and nephews, yes, and I've seen them all. And when I go to Lebanon, and some of them live in Europe, some of them live in the United States, some live in Australia, actually. So we're all over the world.
Nice. Well, Ed, we're gonna wrap up. We've got Lori and Talia. They're gonna ask us some questions, but give you one last chance. Any last words you want to offer up?
Well, looking back at the 88, and you said I've been 6 decades involved in this arena, so to speak. The only I can think of is really appreciation, and appreciation first to the fact that I just happened to have some wonderful genes that my parents gave me, so and some very good guidance before I left the old country at age 18, and have been in the United States ever since. And the appreciation and the wonderful blessing that I was able to marry such a wonderful lady. We've been together for 64 years and still counting, I hope. And having 2 wonderful, 1 son and 1 daughter. And so that's a real blessing, and that's a wonderful thing. Everyone appreciates that. And then one thing that's really special is and I don't think many people have that opportunity to start out working in an arena like geotechnical earthquake engineering with someone like Harry C. None of us knew that much at the time we started. I knew 0, he knew a little bit. And we all grew together, and it was an unbelievable opportunity to work that. And then to have the opportunity to 30 years later, to work with someone equally good, and that's you, Ross. So don't blush. And it's just unbelievable. That's just such a wonderful thing to have had, and not too many people have that opportunity. And fortunately, I did. So it's been a wonderful thing. And then when you look at all the other things, to have clients that trust you to first give me to allow me to work on so many projects when I was at Woodward Clyde, I would get a phone call and come and, we have this problem. Can you solve it for us? Yeah, to have that up, it's just such a wonderful thing to have had. There's nothing but appreciation for that. And because we were fortunate to work on really challenging projects. You seldom, if ever, work with dud engineers. You always work with the best, and that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Whether it's the engineers for the owners, the engineers for the consultants, the engineers for the regulators, and then the panel members I've worked with. My gosh, how many people I've worked with, the likes of Hausner, Allen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It just would be wonderful. So I have nothing but appreciation. I really appreciate that. So it's been great. Thank you all for coming today. How many showed up today? 180.
Over 200. We had over 200, Ed.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful.
So there are some notes of appreciation that I just wanted to read out. Rafael Ortiz Hernandez wrote that he just wanted to thank Mr. Idriss for his conference in Merida, Yucatan, Mexico in 2016. Scott Brandenburg said, I had the pleasure of taking a few courses from Professor Idriss prior to his retirement in 2004. He missed a lot of lectures because he maintained such a busy consulting schedule. I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank Ed for the pizza and beer during all those Saturday makeup lectures.
I got to say that was the brilliant thing Ed did. I learned that trick. You can get away with a lot if you offer up beer and pizza.
Also teach the course that day.
Yeah.
One from Sam GH said, we, dear Professor Idriss, we as Syrians and geotechnical engineers are so proud of you and grateful for your efforts. Jamie Steidel said, not a question, just wanted to say how wonderful it is to hear more of your history, Ed, and it's been an honor to have you and learn from you over the past couple of decades. There's one theme coming through. Well, there's a couple of themes coming through the questions, and I'll just give you a chance, since we're short on time, to maybe comment on both of these. One's really about, I think that touch point you made about the choice between consulting practice, engineering practice versus engineering academia. One person asked, what advice do you give somebody in their early years? And I think that would be an interesting point to touch on. And the other one's really around your observations of earthquakes and, what really, I think, kind of what stands out. What were those pivotal points, from observing earthquakes and some of the key events? Some people asked about 64, Alaska, and the Nepal earthquake. So just want to kind of leave that open for you since we're a little short on time here.
Well, each earthquake really has its own signature, and you always have to go in with an open mind that you say, what can I learn from this earthquake? And occasionally we do have the opportunity to investigate something thoroughly. And one of the best one we ever investigated thoroughly, which was about 20 years after the earthquake occurred in the mid-'80s, was the 3 sites in Alaska. And we learned so much from that. And I actually gave a seminar, the presentation on that during the 60th anniversary of the earthquake in 2014 in Anchorage, with the EERI annual national meeting, where we, there was one side that moved a lot. One side, the slide was very large. Another one moved a little less, and another one moved not at all. They were all in the same vicinity, and the question was why. And we had that opportunity because the state of Alaska first wanted to build a state office building. They wanted to investigate the first 2 sites, the one that moved a lot, the one moved a little less. And we learned a lot from that. The one was a little stronger than the other, and therefore it was arrested the movement, didn't move as much. But the third one was for the Supreme Court, and that side had moved only a couple inches in one direction and none in the other. And they asked us, why is that? Can we build at this side? And so we were able to investigate quite thoroughly. And what it turned out was that it was much stronger because there had been a landslide which had resulted in an over-consolidation in that clay that made it much stronger and therefore did not move during that earthquake. But it could move a little bit if the earthquake, the motions were a lot larger than that. So that was fascinating. And so you always have to keep an open mind, because at that particular site, the last one that hardly moved. The first firm who was asked by the court, should we or should we not build it, told them, well, it hardly moved at all in 1964, therefore it probably will not move next time, so you go ahead and build. They were not sure that was the correct answer. They asked another firm. The other said, well, it didn't move in 1964, but it could move for a future date, so we better not build. So they finally came to us and said, what do you think? I said, I have no idea. I need to investigate this. You cannot, the lesson learned from that is you should never reach a conclusion without studying things, And that was a fascinating thing to have that opportunity to do that. And that's actually been one of the best things about the last 60 or so years, is the ability to convince clients that you can't just look things shallowly. You should have to think of them a lot more deeply. And that's my advice to whoever wants to get into any field, is make sure you learn it.
And great advice.
And when I was a student at Caltech, Richard Feynman was a famous professor, and he was not much older than what I was. He was such a bright individual, and he loved to come to the foreign students meetings. And I was a member of the foreign student club, whatever we called it. And he'd always play his bangos and what have you. And he always said that to learn something, you gotta learn how to teach it. So that was a very, very wonderful thing to have learned from such a famous individual.
I actually wrote that down when you said that. I thought that was such a great quote. But how about that issue when young people come to you and they are asking, and I get this question a lot, how do you choose between practice and academia, especially those who are pursuing graduate programs and have that option and key decision to make? What thoughts might you offer?
It's not, it all depends on, I know had I started in academia, I probably would have never got tenure, because I'm not sure I could have survived the kind of stuff you have to go through to get to that point. Because I saw what people have to go through. And but as in private practice, you can sort of, you have a lot more authority. In the university, you have zero authority, absolutely no authority whatsoever. But in private practice, if you show some success, you start getting a little authority, so you can advance a little differently. So it depends on the individual and then what their attitudes are. So I just admit that to myself, that's why I say I was very fortunate that Stanford did not give me that position. So I can't tell whether one is better than the other. I mean, Scott just said hello, and he was one of the brightest students that went through UC Davis, and I actually asked him several times to substitute for me in the undergraduate class. So he did it. So it's got him going on his teaching, wanting to teach. And he's doing a great job as a teacher. He went right from the university, from finishing PhD into teaching, and he's doing a great job. And many have done that. Ross went through practice for a couple of years, and then he had the bug, and he came, and he's one of the most wonderful teachers anybody can have. So you never know. I don't know what to advise you at that juncture. Just go with the flow.
I'd have to say that, Ed, you also pointed out that they don't have to be this separate, purely separate. You showed from blending in your career how as a consultant, you could be active in applied research, pushing the profession forward. And then when you were in teaching, you stayed connected with industry and helped drive industry's adoption and dealing with challenging problems. So it doesn't have to be 100% one or the other. It's a blend.
No,
that you chose.
and I was fortunate to have that overlap, and especially at Woodward Clyde, where they had a professional development program. And one of the things I was able to convince them to do, give me enough funds to teach to the other staff members by bringing in others to teach, or I myself to teach it. So it was a wonderful thing to, just have that opportunity. So, and
I think those are some good insights to share. For those who have expressed appreciation notes, we're collecting those, and we're going to put those all in an email and send those to Ed and Ross after this, because it's a lot for us to manage. We're a little past the 12 o'clock hour. So I want to, this is our first one, so we're not sure, Elizabeth, if we have a closing slide or something that EERI does to wrap this up. I think it's just been an incredible hour. I want to first express to Ed and Ross, thank you so much for accepting this challenge. As they said, they're the guinea pig for doing this, but it's something that we thought as the Oral History Committee would just be a wonderful way to invite our subjects for these oral histories to share more about their lives. And I think you, Ed, have really set a very high bar for others to follow. So thank you. I think people just really, really enjoyed it, seeing the expressions of appreciation in the comment box. And I certainly did, and learned a lot today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming to our meeting, so to speak. And
oh, we do have a closing slide.
Go ahead. If you have any further remarks, feel free to share those. I was just getting
again, just thank you, EERI, for giving me the honor of being the interviewee. And Ed, it is always fun hearing all the stories. Even the best stories are the ones we did put in. But
I know. I had many questions.
Go ahead, ask them, or send me
No.
I
meant like
email.
Maybe we can have one of those fun dinners and hear some of the stories that we didn't get to hear today.
Yeah. Well, I come to Los Gatos once in a while and spend about 4 or 5. Maybe I'll call you one of those times. Maybe I stay at a hotel that has a wonderful Greek restaurant in it. Maybe we can have.
I know that restaurant. It's excellent. I'll definitely come down and join you.
It's wonderful. So I'll call you next time I'm coming.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Idriss, Dr. Boulanger, for joining us and for putting so many hours and so much work into producing the wonderful volume of the Oral History program. Thank you to our moderators and the co-chairs of the program for all the work you do. On behalf of EERI, just a few final remarks here. A survey is going to pop up in your browser when the webinar finishes. You'll also receive that by email tomorrow, and we're really grateful for any feedback you can give us. That helps us plan topics for webinars in the future and better improve this program. As noted, you can learn more about EERI at our website, and we'd love you to join us if you're not already a member. We also appreciate your support of the LFE Endowment, which funds both our earthquake reconnaissance and other EERI programs like the travel study and this webinar series. And then finally, again, just to acknowledge our cooperative agreement with funding from FEMA and the EERI members who make all of our work possible. So thank you again.